I would now request Dr. Jigar Desai to introduce our next speaker, please, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Deep Datta. He is MD Medicine. He is at present Chairman, Department of Endocrinology at Cedar Super Specialty Clinics and Cedar Pet Labs. He is designated at Patient Care, developing holistic diabetic clinic and medical research in endocrinology and metabolism. Yes, sir.
Hello, I am Dr. Deep Datta. I'm an endocrinologist based in Dwarka, New Delhi. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Mayur and his entire team for going digital with SwasthyaCon, which is a landmark event in the field of diabetes education in our country. And I have looked at the scientific program. It is very innovative and new topics are there in the program which we don't see across in different meetings or conferences. So my job here before you is to present before the importance or the role of real world evidence while we are evaluating the treatment options for diabetes care. So again, a very novel topic. I would like to thank for thinking of this topic. And I did do a lot of research because if we see today's medical literature, daily or maybe every week, a paper is coming on real world evidence. So how strong are these evidence and should we take them lightly or are they to be taken seriously? That is the message of today's presentation. So this is a beautiful article I would like to quote in this presentation. This published in Journal of Advanced Therapeutics way back in 2018, where they have tried to analyze how do we go about collecting real world data, generating original research, and how do we assess the quality of research, whether it is good, bad, or maybe just an average. So do we need real world data? Yes, we need real world data simply because we know that the randomized control trials are gold standard in terms of establishing new treatment practices. But the very fact they are randomized and they are controlled trials, the control means a very strict inclusion criteria are there. Only patients with certain phenotypic features or certain diagnostic criteria are taken. So many times in our day-to-day clinical practice, a small fraction of the patients what we see may actually be fulfilled in those randomized controlled trials. And here comes the role of real-world data analysis where the same disease, the same treatment modulation is re-evaluated in a wider spectrum of patients having a wider spectrum of disease presentation or wider spectrum of biochemical manifestation. So if a treatment which shows it works in the randomized clinical trial, if the data are as good in the real world trial, we know that yes, this is a molecule or a treatment option which is going to work in the majority of our patients. So when we look at a real world paper, just like when we look at a clinical trial, we need to see whether it is blinded or not blinded. Blinded trials are better, randomized trials are even better. Even blinded, we look at whether they are double blinded or single blinded or open label. Double blinded is considered to be much better than open label study. Similarly, in real world studies also, there are different criteria we need to look into. The details, I shall come to them subsequently. So in a nutshell, as this slide shows, in a real world study, you generate data for a wider spectrum of population, which is more reflective of our patient practices. So how do we generate real world data? Say if you decide, okay, I'm going to do a real world study, how do I do it? It's very simple. I think going digital is the way forward. I think many of us are using digital data collection. We generate EMR sheets. We use a digital prescription. And the very fact we are doing that, our data is being saved in a server or in your desktop or computer, whatever system. So data from these electronic health records can be analyzed, say, after 6 months or a year or two. If I'm doing it alone, I will need a more amount of time to collect the data of, say, 500 or 1,000 patients. If we are a team of doctors, 4, 5, 6 doctors of different part of the countries come together, you would need a much smaller time to pull together the data of a larger number of patients And the beauty of that real world data would be that it would be representative of different parts of the whole country. So that would be even a much more stronger data, simply because the diversity would be so much more in that data. Other than that, in Western countries where they have insurance-driven societies, like in the US or in European countries where the entire country, the government takes care of the healthcare, they maintain databases. So the insurance database can be analyzed retrospectively to generate real-world data in the setting of diabetes, in various conditions or complications of diabetes, where the government is spending for the healthcare infrastructure. So government has their own database, which can again be used to generate real world data. In the Indian setting, I think we as clinicians, we need to get united. We need to digitalize our clinic, and we need to pool together data to generate more original Indian real world data, because we Indians are different from what Caucasians are or what Afro-Americans are. Many times things which work better in them may not work so great in us. A classical example, the dyslipidemia which we see in Indians is a predominantly high TG, low HDL. The dyslipidemia which we see predominantly in Caucasians or Afro-Americans is a high LDL. So yes, the quality control criteria. How, if I see a paper before me on a real world study, how do I analyze it, whether it is a good or not so good paper? So very simple. Just like in a randomized control trial, they should have a pre-study clear-cut hypothesis. You cannot keep on collecting data and say, okay, I'll change my hypothesis based on what the data I am getting. So that brings a lot of bias. So my hypothesis should be very clear what I'm trying to evaluate before I start analyzing or collecting the data for real-world analysis. The outcome should be very clear before I start collecting data or doing the analysis. They should have a good power calculation. The study should be adequately powered. And this power calculation should be done before the study has started and not in the middle, or not a post hoc power calculation, which is considered to be inferior. And that should be mentioned in that research paper. So the power calculation is largely determined by what is the primary outcome of their study, what primary outcome in diabetes we are looking at, and how much difference we are expecting by the intervention which we are giving. The intervention can be a molecule, a medicine, or a procedure, and as compared to those patients who are not receiving that treatment option. So greater the expected difference between the two study groups, lesser is going to be the sample size. Thirdly, the statistical method should be clearly mentioned what they are using. Larger the data, more likely the data is going to be normally distributed, and more likely we are going to use parametric tests for analysis. And then the result section should clearly mention all the primary and secondary outcomes of the real world study. And in the discussion, there should be a critical analysis of the results of the real world study with the prior published clinical trials. So if we have all of these, then we can say this is a good real world research paper we are looking into. A classical example of randomized control trials to real world studies is with regards to the efficacy of SGLT2 inhibitors. We have these three huge landmark CVOTs, the EMPA-REG for empagliflozin, the CANVAS trial for canagliflozin, and the DECLARE-TIMI for dapagliflozin. We know there is subtle difference in the patient profile. Like EMPA-REG had almost everybody had established CAD. CANVAS had a more heterogeneous mixture. So DECLARE-TIMI, 60% of the patients had only multiple risk factors. Only 35% of patients had established CAD. But when we look at the real world studies, the huge studies, the CVD real 1 and the CVD real 2 studies, where they had more than 2 lakh patients in each of the studies, it was a more universal representation of the Caucasian population. And the real world study removed the small heterogeneity in the results which were seen in the EMPA-REG, CANVAS, and DECLARE. It showed that whether you're using dapagliflozin or canagliflozin or empagliflozin, the glycemic efficacy is similar in the real world, what was suggested from the randomized control trials. So the universality and the applicability of SGLT2 inhibitors for managing diabetes and prevention of end organ damage was very beautifully replicated in the CVD real studies. So with that, let me present before you some of the real world studies which our group we have tried to generate in the Indian setting. This paper was published in Indian Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism in 2019, where we looked at multi-drug therapy for managing diabetes. Sitting here in New Delhi, almost all our patients have diabetes. We rarely get to see lean type 2 diabetes. So we know that SGLT2 inhibitors cause mild weight loss. We know GLP-1 analogs cause mild weight loss and even orlistat. But there is no data from India to show that what if we use a multi-drug therapy, combine these medications, metformin, SGLT2 inhibitors, GLP-1 analogs, and orlistat, a different permutation combination, how does it affect in terms of weight loss and diabetes control? Because the direct study told us that in a diabetes, if you can cause a good amount of weight loss, you may actually reverse diabetes. People who lost more than 15 kilos of body weight in direct study, they had nearly 86% reversal of type 2 diabetes, means going off all medications, and the equivalency continued to be less than 6.5%. So in this, we did a pool data analysis of medical records of 2 centers in Delhi, 5,300 odd patients. But the point is the patients, they were screened, only 1,500 odd patients fulfilled all our criteria, being patient with type 2 diabetes on OADs, not on insulin. And patients who had at least 6 months follow-up, their data was analyzed. So ultimately, data from 558 odd patients was analyzed in this study at the end. If you look at the profile of the patient, you can see all patients had diabetes clear-cut as the seen in the table 1 on the right-hand side. And if you see, there almost majority of the patients were on metformin, a good number on sulfonylureas. If you can see, DPP-4 inhibitors, also a good number of patients were on. Very few patients were on GLP-1 analogs because most of the patients cannot afford that. There was around 14% people on orlistat, and a very good percent, 74%, were on one of the 3 different SGLT2 inhibitors. So now this is the outcome. So that's the beauty. We analyzed the data based on the weight loss. People who lost the maximum weight, they were in the quartile 1. They lost around 7 kilos weight, and people who lost the minimum weight, in fact, some people even put on weight on these medications. So anything can happen in the real world studies. So they were quartile 4. What is beautifully seen in the quartile 1, people who lost the maximum weight, they had the maximum chance of diabetes reversal, and they had the best diabetes control. So establishing the role of multi-drug therapy in managing diabetes. Another paper which we published in Clinical Diabetology, the Journal of European Diabetes Association, which showed that when we use a half tablet of canagliflozin 300, the monthly cost of therapy comes down significantly. We are always using half tablet, but there was no published data. This is the first real world data to show that when you use half tablet of canagliflozin 300, not only your cost of therapy comes down significantly, you get as good a glycemic efficacy and weight loss as the full tablet of Cana 300. And so I'm not going into details of this study. It is available online. Similarly, there is another real-world study which we published in the Annals of African Medicine. Again, we used a half tablet of empagliflozin 25, which is 12.5 milligrams, and we showed that is the most cheapest and the most effective way to use empagliflozin in our practice, as compared to both 10 milligrams and 25 milligrams full tablets. So we need to innovate. We need to find solutions which are not only effective but also cheap, so that a greater number of our patients can afford such treatments. And if we bring down the monthly cost of therapy, the compliance would also greatly improve, leading to a better long-term outcomes. In the same study, if you see the 12.5 milligram per day dose of empagliflozin, the half tablet of 25 milligrams, they had as good a weight loss and as good a glycemic control as the full tablet of empagliflozin 25. So now we have some strong data to support the practice of breaking tablets into half and using in clinical practice. So I would like to end by saying that real world data and analysis and studies are the way forward in type 2 diabetes, because that would lead to data validation and generation from a more wider spectrum of general population that would be more representative of the general population. Sitting in India, I think we need to take initiative and generate more and more real world data from the Indian setting so that we can meet the knowledge gap in the Indian setting. With this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deep Datta.